Hey guys, so this is finally going to be my review of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child by Jack Thorne. And here's my plan with this. Despite how long it took me to read this, I do feel like I'm still processing the story. But I already have a lot of thoughts and it would take me forever to talk about them. So my plan right now is to kind of, in this video I have bent the cover, okay? In this video my plan is to kind of give a brief overview of my feelings on the book and then briefly discuss some things that I have thought as I was reading, but because I just finished the book yesterday, already I know that I have some thoughts that I'm going to have to like sit with for a while and really think about, and I think that those will become either videos or blog posts in the future where I can go like more in depth about certain parts of the book, because there's a lot that I want to say, but I'm gonna try and be briefer in this video and just kind of go over my general feelings and some like really like surface level things that I thought as I was reading this, things that I will probably talk about more in depth later on. I should warn you that this is going to contain spoilers. I just can't talk about this without talking about spoilers, so there will be spoilers in this. I was terrified going into this book because of negative things that I had heard, but as I was reading, the first thing that really kind of like threw me off and angered me almost, and I should have marked the page number but I didn't, but at some point early in the play, Harry and Hermione are in Hermione's office, I think, or are they in Harry's office? I don't know, they're at the Ministry of Magic and they're having a conversation about how like dark magic is like making a comeback in the Wizarding World, and Hermione makes a comment about how all these different like groups slash creatures who aligned with Voldemort before are like going underground or whatever, and she makes this comment. I actually think she makes a couple comments in the scene about werewolves, and she lumps the werewolves together, kind of like she just uses the term werewolves to describe basically the werewolves that aligned with Voldemort, but she doesn't make a distinction. She just talks about them like werewolves and makes it sound like she's talking about all werewolves. She talks about how the Ministry's lost track of them and how they've got like disappeared, and it's worrying, and it bothered me in a way that her comments about like other creatures in that scene didn't, purely because of Remus and because like Hermione knew him, and we've gotten like background information before about how later on Hermione did a lot for like werewolf rights and things, and you know that that was because of Remus, but then for her to make those sorts of comments and make it as if she's talking about all werewolves instead of distinguishing more between which werewolves she's talking about really angered me, because it's so unlike Hermione. And there were a number of times throughout this play where the characters felt out of character, but that was the first one for me, and the one that really threw me, because I just can't imagine that Hermione, after knowing Remus and knowing the struggles he went through as a werewolf, that she would make those sorts of comments without being a lot more careful about how she worded it. On a lighter note though, Scorpius Malfoy is adorable. Like, I want to adopt him. He was by far the best part of this entire book. I love him far more than I ever expected to, because like Draco's one of my least favorite characters. I've never been fond of him in the way some other people are, but oh my god, Scorpius he is so, I have no idea how he came to exist being a Malfoy. Clearly it had to be his mom, since we know very little about her and that's the only explanation, but I loved him, and he made the play for me. I think he's the only thing that allowed me to get through this book. I love him, and I'm almost willing to forgive a lot of other things about this book just because he exists within it. The thing that really confused me about this book is I just don't understand the conflict between Harry and Albus in this book. And considering that was such a huge part of the story, I feel like I should have understood it, but I just can't get why they're both so dramatic. I get a certain level of like tension between parents and kids is normal, especially when they're teenagers, which Albus is a teenager, but it was presented as being like so different than Harry's relationship with like James and Lily. It's presented, I'm like, if he's having these problems with Albus, why isn't he having them with James and Lily? Why is like, I just don't understand. I don't understand any of it and how it was played out. Rose in this book and the way she like completely stops talking to Albus when he becomes a Slytherin and how that lasts for years, it makes no sense to me. How I know there's a lot of like story that we're missing there that we don't get to see, but I just don't understand why Albus gets stored into Slytherin, and I feel like Rose would have difficulty accepting that, but I just can't imagine her, especially again being Hermione's kid, although I don't like a lot of how Hermione's characterized in this story, being like that she would completely not talk to him for years because he's a Slytherin. That just, I could not, there's so much of this that I can't believe. James has the invisibility cloak in this book, and I kind of liked just getting that tidbit too. Speaking of things that I didn't believe in this story, the trolley witch. What even? That was by far the most absurd part of the book, and something I cannot believe they wrote, and that no one suggested taking it out, because I still can't believe, like, there are other parts of this story that I can't believe, but the trolley witch thing was, I mean, absurd is the only word I can come up with. It was just, what was happening in that scene? Why did no one suggest cutting that? Someone had to suggest cutting it, but why was it left in? Why was it written in the first place? That scene was the strangest Harry Potter thing I have ever read, with like very few exceptions, and like it's something I would expect to read in fan fiction, and if I read it in a fan fiction, I would probably leave a review about how weird it was. Also, Delphi breaks into Hogwarts in this, and how does she break into Hogwarts? Because it's Hogwarts, and even Voldemort had trouble getting into Hogwarts, and I know that Dumbledore was there then, but still, how does she just get into Hogwarts? One quote that I wrote down word for word is, "Mom always told me that you were a better man than I could see," which is something that Scorpius says to Draco. It might possibly be my favorite line of the entire book, because the idea that she was talking, like, it's hints at so much about Draco and Scorpius's relationship that we don't see. So Astoria and Draco's relationship too, but just this idea that like Draco's so closed off with Scorpius and like clearly loves him from this book, we can tell, but like doesn't show it well, because I don't think he's like learned how to. But then having Astoria, who's like much more like open with her son, and like Scorpius kind of probably suggesting to her at some point or the other that like Draco isn't like, I mean, we don't know exactly what Scorpius said to her, but I'm sure there was something like either like his dad doesn't care, or his dad's like a horrible person because he was a Death Eater, or like whatever, but Astoria like talking to him and telling him that Draco actually like is a good person, and just the idea that Scorpius and Astoria even had this conversation is just like makes me really emotional. And then for like Scorpius to like say that to Draco, just that was my favorite line in the book, which to be fair isn't saying a lot since I hated so many of the lines, but still. So it took me till the very end of the book to realize that Delphi and Scorpius were cousins. I should have realized that as soon as we found out that Delphi was Bellatrix's kid, but I didn't. It took me until like the very end of the book to realize that like Scorpius's grandmother, like what Delphi and Draco and Delphi would be first cousins. So Delphi would be Scorpius's second cousin. It took me until the very end of the book to put that together, and that kind of annoys me because it shouldn't have taken me that long. McGonagall with the Marauders map was also hilarious to me. Just her like hating it, not wanting to do it. I do feel like it was kind of out of character for McGonagall to not put her foot down, because she's very clear to Harry that she doesn't want to separate Scorpius and Albus. I feel like McGonagall would have like been firmer about that and not have done it. So I did think it was kind of out of character for her to even agree, but I was amused while reading, hearing her like struggling with the Marauders map. But one thing I was kind of disappointed with is that Harry gave McGonagall the Marauders map, and which presumably she didn't know of the existence of before. And the fact that we didn't get a moment of McGonagall realizing that that's how Harry, Ron, Hermione, and the Marauders got around Hogwarts, which is really disappointing. Like, it would have been so easy to just throw in a small moment where McGonagall has this realization, but she didn't, and that's disappointing. Ron in this book felt like movie Ron and not book Ron. Like I said, I had problems with the characterization of a lot of characters, and I'm trying to take into account that they're all adults in this book and will obviously have changed since they were teenagers, but the Ron in this book definitely felt like movie Ron and not book Ron, which is incredibly disappointing. Kind of liked how like much Ron, Hermione, and Harry and Ginny was in this book. I was kind of worried after J.K. Rowling had made those comments about Ron, Hermione like a long time ago that like it wouldn't be as strong in this book as it was. I really liked how, except for the alternative future where Harry died, Harry and Ginny were like always married. It was nice to see that like held true no matter what universe they were in. And Hermione didn't have that, but still the fact that we got these hints in each one that they like liked each other was nice. Or I don't get why in the universe where neither one of them are married they haven't yet admitted their feelings for each other, but at least we get confirmation that like Ron and Hermione are like good and wonderful in the universe that like most matters in this story. That made me happy. Seeing Snape in the alternate universe was weird, and like it's weird to me. Like, his relationship with Ron and Hermione in that universe is weird to me. Like, them being like kind of friends, if a little antagonistic, was strange, and I had a hard time accepting that, and I had a hard time him accepting talking about his feelings for Lily like so openly, because it just doesn't seem like Snape. And maybe in this alternate universe when he's had like more years now, like I can't, he repressed that for so long that even with the extra years of that alternate universe, I can't imagine him being that okay with talking about it with people. Like, every character felt out of character for me in this, but like I can't imagine Snape like joking with people like he was in there. Like, although I did laugh when he made the comment to Hermione about, at least, like, I'm not married to him, about Ron, but still, like, didn't feel like Snape to me. I just can't imagine Snape ever wanting to like openly talk to people about having feelings for Lily, because like he doesn't even really ever talk about it to Dumbledore. Like, he shows Dumbledore his Patronus, but I feel like he does that purely because he doesn't want to like say it, and like it's just weird to me that he would like talk about it so easily. The next note for what I should talk about is how off the characters felt, but I've already said that a million times at this point. None of the characters, except the new characters like Albus and Scorpius, I felt like they were in character. Even Rose, like I mentioned before, I don't understand why she would have completely cut out for years when he became a Slytherin. That felt strange to me. I can't say Albus or Scorpius fell out of character, but that's largely because this is like the first significant thing we've learned about them. I'm having a hard time accepting that this is canon, mostly because none of the characters feel like the characters. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to take into account that this is like 20 some odd years later, and they've gotten older and are like middle-aged and things, but like their entire personality should not feel different, and it's not like a believable change. The Rose Scorpius at the end of this book, it did not. Okay, clearly over the course of this book there are a few moments where you can tell that Scorpius is like really excited about the idea of like Rose talking to him, and this makes me feel very naive, I purely took that as him wanting to be friends with her, largely because he shows throughout this book how important Albus's friendship is to him, and you can also tell how like kind of hurt Albus feels about Rose's rejection. So I interpreted Scorpius wanting to be like friendly with Rose as Scorpius recognizing how important Rose was to Albus, and so he wanted to become friends with her for Albus's benefit, was how I interpreted things. So at the very end of the book, when you find out that Scorpius has like romantic feelings for Rose and like asked her out, it actually caught me by surprise. I feel like it shouldn't have. I feel like I've been so engrossed in shipping and that sort of thing for so long that the idea of Scorpius and Rose like should have occurred to me before that point, but it didn't. I totally just interpreted that as Scorpius wanting to be friends with her. So when you found out that Scorpius had a crush on Rose, I was legitimately surprised. And I can't say that I ship them together. I'm not like angry at the idea of Scorpius and Rose, but to be completely honest, I would have preferred them becoming friends. There's something about the way that the scene towards the end plays out. Scorpius being like really happy that he had the courage to ask her out even though she said no, and him being like, he makes comments about like how they're going to be married one day, how he knows like someday she'll say yes, and it's kind of like, it's kind of obnoxious to just like declare you're going to get married to her when you asked her out once and she said no. And I feel like that's like a popular trope with romantic relationships, but to be completely honest, I'm kind of like tired of that trope, and so I didn't really like how that played out. And I've talked plenty of times in the past about how I love like fictional friendships and how I feel like they're often like downplayed in favor of romantic relationships. I feel like what romantic hints for Rose and Scorpius there was in the book could have so easily been taken out, not much would have been changed. And since presumably we're not going to get any more like of a continuation of this, then we could have just let everyone continue to ship whatever they wanted to ship, and without like hinting at something becoming canon. Like, really, people still can, and there's not anything that like definitely says that they're going to end up together, but like just leave the shipping more ambiguous. If they had wanted to play something out bigger than that, that would have been one thing, but just like throwing that one little thing in kind of seemed pointless. And I feel like after how Rose acted the entire play, that just turns me off of shipping them even more. And I would have felt a lot better if they had just stuck with hinting that she was going to become friends with them, because I feel like that's what was really needed, and adding the like romance thing to it was just unnecessary to me. And I feel like it would have been a lot more meaningful if they had just done something at the end of the play to show that Rose like realized she was wrong the entire time, which I don't feel like happened with how that final scene that she's in, where she does hide Albus and Scorpius, yeah, but there's no like acknowledgement or like apology for how she treated them, and I feel like that would have been nice. And then like the beginnings of friendship without the hints of romance, just Rose realizing how wrong she'd been and showing the beginnings of a friendship would have been a lot more meaningful for me personally. Overall, I'd say that I did find reading Cursed Child to be enjoyable a lot of the time, at least in the way that like watching a terrible movie can sometimes be enjoyable. There were parts of it that I didn't hate, but overall there were so many things about this story that just didn't feel right to me. And a lot of people have said that it feels like a fan fiction. I do feel like that. I feel like if I had read this as a fan fiction, I would like praise the fan fiction author, but fan fiction is also often like a different sort of thing, and I just feel that there were certain things, especially that trolley witch thing. What was that? Like, that I have trouble accepting this is like a real thing that's like supposedly Harry Potter canon now, because it's just too strange and off. A lot of the times the lines also felt awkward, but I do have to admit that I haven't seen it performed. I do feel like if the actors are really talented, maybe they could really pull it off, and that wouldn't be a problem in the stage version. I don't know, I feel like I would have to see it performed to really judge that, but reading the lines, they felt awkward, and like the story in general was weird. That's really why overall I feel like the book was okay to me, mostly because I did kind of enjoy it, but I have trouble accepting it as Harry Potter canon because the story is too strange and it feels off to me. But like, I didn't hate it as in I didn't feel angry the entire time I was reading it, just part of the time. I do really wish that I could say that I thought it was like a brilliant story and I loved it, but I can't do that, and I just desperately wish that certain decisions had been different so that it felt more like it was actually Harry Potter to me. I think that's the biggest problem. Despite the fact that J.K. Rowling approved the story and like worked on the story itself, I feel like the fact that she didn't write it does come across, and maybe if she did, I would feel like it was more Harry Potter, because that characterization, I feel like the characterization is a huge thing to me, and that does also depend on the actors quite a bit, like how they're playing the characters, but I feel like written itself, the characters just feel so off to me that, and I don't know if that would be the case if J.K. Rowling wrote it, and maybe if she had and the characters felt more like the characters to me, maybe I would feel better about the story as a whole, because that was such a huge problem for me. But then there are things like the trolley witch, and I cannot believe they did that. I just, that trolley witch thing, I have no words, you guys. This has already gone on longer than I intended it to, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up talking about my conflicted Cursed Child feelings here. Like I said, I'll probably talk about it more later. I mean, it's Harry Potter, so it will definitely come up at some point in time. but I'm gonna think about things I'm gonna talk about more in depth about this, and probably do that kind of soon. I don't know, it depends on how long I feel like I need to fully digest everything, which might be a while. I don't know. I'm probably just always going to feel very conflicted, but I will see you guys later. Bye.